The Bell Witch Haunting. In the early 1800s, nestled in the quiet countryside of Tennessee, lived the Bell family. Their homestead was a modest, sprawling farm, surrounded by dense woods that seemed to whisper secrets in the wind. I had always heard the stories growing up, tales of strange happenings and ghostly apparitions, but I never imagined I would come to see it for myself. My name is Samuel Johnson, a historian with a fascination for the unexplained. It was curiosity, perhaps, that led me to the Bell family's old property. The stories had been passed down through generations, and I wanted to uncover the truth behind the legend of the Bell Witch. The Bells were well respected in the community. John Bell, the patriarch, was a man of integrity and strength, admired by all who knew him. His wife, Lucy, was known for her kindness and hospitality. They had several children, who were equally beloved in the small town of Adams, Tennessee. The first signs of trouble began in 1817. John Bell was out inspecting his fields when he encountered a strange, dog-like creature with the head of a rabbit. He shot at it, but the creature vanished into thin air. From that moment, the Bell family's life would never be the same. Strange noises began to plague the household. At night, the family would be roused from their sleep by the sounds of knocking on the walls and doors. Sometimes, it sounded like heavy stones being thrown on the roof. At first, they dismissed it as the work of mischievous children or animals, but the disturbances grew increasingly sinister. It wasn't long before the entity made its presence known in more terrifying ways. The children began to wake up with bruises and scratches on their bodies. Betsy Bell, the youngest daughter, seemed to be the primary target of the entity's wrath. She would scream in the night, claiming to be pinched, slapped, and even choked by invisible hands. The family sought help from their neighbors, but no one could offer a solution. They prayed, hoping their faith would protect them from the unseen tormentor, but the attacks only intensified. Word of the haunting spread, and curious visitors came from far and wide to witness the strange happenings for themselves. As I stood in the now abandoned Bell homestead, I could almost feel the oppressive atmosphere that must have pervaded the house all those years ago. The walls seemed to hold the echoes of the past, whispering the family's fear and despair. I spent days poring over old records and accounts, piecing together the story of the Bell Witch. The entity's manifestations grew more violent as time went on. It spoke to the family in a disembodied voice, taunting them and predicting misfortunes. It claimed to be a witch, bent on destroying John Bell and his family. Despite their efforts to rid themselves of the malevolent spirit, the Bells were powerless against its relentless attacks. I couldn't help but feel a shiver run down my spine as I delved deeper into the history of the Bell Witch. What could have driven this unseen force to such malevolence? Was it truly the spirit of a witch, or something even darker and more mysterious? The answers, I knew, lay hidden within the shadows of the past, waiting to be uncovered. And so, my investigation into the Bell Witch haunting had only just begun. As I continued my research, I became increasingly drawn into the dark and twisted saga of the Bell family. Each day brought new revelations, each more chilling than the last. The Bell Witch's influence extended beyond mere physical attacks. It seemed to enjoy playing with the family's minds, sowing seeds of doubt and fear. One evening, while combing through a stack of old letters in the local archive, I came across a correspondence between John Bell and a close friend, James Johnston. The letters detailed John's growing anxiety and desperation. He described how the entity would mimic the voices of his loved ones, leading him to question his own sanity. It would call out to him in the dead of night, whispering threats and curses. The community, initially skeptical, began to take the haunting seriously as more and more people experienced the entity's malevolence. Friends and neighbors who stayed overnight at the Bell home reported hearing eerie voices, feeling unseen hands touch them, and witnessing objects move on their own. Some even claimed to have seen a spectral figure lurking in the shadows. One account that stood out to me was that of William Porter, a local farmer. He stayed at the Bell house one night, determined to confront the entity. He was awakened by the feeling of something pulling his bed covers. As he lit a candle, he saw a faint, ghostly figure standing at the foot of his bed. The figure's eyes glowed with an unnatural light, and it disappeared as quickly as it had appeared. William fled the house in terror, vowing never to return. The Bell family was desperate for relief. They sought out the help of ministers and exorcists, but their efforts were in vain. The entity seemed to grow stronger with each passing day, feeding off their fear and suffering. Betsy Bell, in particular, was tormented relentlessly. The once vibrant young girl became withdrawn and pale, her spirit broken by the constant attacks. Despite the overwhelming evidence of supernatural activity, there were those who remained skeptical. Some suggested that the Bells were fabricating the haunting for attention or financial gain. But as I delved deeper into their story, it became clear that this was not a mere ploy. The family's suffering was real, and the entity's presence was undeniable. One fateful night, John Bell's health took a turn for the worse. He had been experiencing strange symptoms for months: trembling, difficulty swallowing, and episodes of paralysis. The doctors were baffled, unable to diagnose his condition. As he lay in his bed, weakened and frail, the entity's voice taunted him, promising his imminent demise. In the early hours of the morning, John Bell passed away. The family was devastated, their patriarch taken from them by an unseen force. But even in death, the Bell Witch was not finished with them. The entity continued to torment the family, leaving them in a state of perpetual fear. As I stood by John Bell's grave, I couldn't shake the feeling that the story was far from over. The Bell Witch's motives remained shrouded in mystery, and I was determined to uncover the truth. What had driven this malevolent spirit to such lengths? What connection did it have to the Bell family? The answers were out there, hidden in the shadows of the past. And I would not rest until I had uncovered every last secret of the Bell Witch haunting. My quest to understand the Bell Witch led me to seek out descendants of those who had witnessed the haunting firsthand. I traveled to neighboring towns, tracking down anyone who might have had a connection to the events that had transpired over a century ago. One such individual was an elderly woman named Mary Catherine Johnson, a distant relative of the Bells. Mary Catherine lived in a quaint, time-worn cottage on the outskirts of Adams. Her eyes, though clouded with age, still held a spark of knowledge and experience. She welcomed me with a knowing smile, as if she had been expecting my visit. "You're here about the witch, aren't you?" she asked, her voice raspy but strong. I nodded, eager to hear her account. Mary Catherine led me to her parlor, where we sat surrounded by faded photographs and heirlooms from a bygone era. She began to recount the stories passed down through her family, tales of terror and resilience. "My great-grandfather, James Johnston, was a close friend of John Bell," she began. "He witnessed the torment that family went through. It wasn't just the physical attacks, it was the psychological torture that nearly drove them mad." She spoke of nights filled with unearthly wails and days marked by inexplicable phenomena. According to Mary Catherine, the entity would reveal intimate secrets and predict events with eerie accuracy. It seemed to thrive on the chaos and fear it instilled. "There was one incident," she continued, her eyes narrowing in concentration. "Betsy Bell was set to marry a young man named Joshua Gardner. The entity despised him and did everything in its power to prevent the union. Betsy was tormented so relentlessly that she eventually broke off the engagement." Mary Catherine's stories painted a vivid picture of a family under siege, not by a mere spirit but by a malevolent force with a deep, personal vendetta. But what intrigued me most was her mention of a mysterious woman named Kate Batts. Kate Batts was a neighbor who had a contentious relationship with John Bell, Mary Catherine explained. Many believed she was a witch and that she had cursed the Bell family out of spite. After John Bell's death, the entity claimed to be her spirit, calling itself Old Kate. This revelation added a new layer to the mystery. Was the Bell Witch truly the spirit of Kate Batts, seeking revenge from beyond the grave? Or was the entity merely using her name to mask its true identity? Determined to learn more, I visited the local church where Kate Batts was said to have been buried. The graveyard was ancient, its tombstones weathered and overgrown. As I stood before her grave, I couldn't help but feel a chill in the air, as if the past were reaching out to touch the present. In my search for answers, I also uncovered records of other strange occurrences in the region around the same time. Families in nearby areas reported similar disturbances, though none as severe as those experienced by the Bells. It seemed that the entity's reach extended far beyond the confines of the Bell homestead. The pieces of the puzzle were slowly coming together, but the picture was far from complete. The Bell Witch's motives and origins remained elusive, hidden behind a veil of fear and speculation. As I delved deeper, I knew that the key to understanding the Bell Witch lay not just in the events themselves, but in the people affected by them. Their stories, passed down through generations, held the clues to unraveling this age-old mystery. And so, my investigation continued, driven by a relentless desire to uncover the truth. The answers were out there, buried in the shadows of history, waiting for someone brave enough to seek them out. As I pieced together the fragmented history of the Bell Witch, I found myself returning to the Bell homestead one last time. The air was thick with a sense of anticipation, as if the very land itself knew that a conclusion was drawing near. I had one final lead to follow, a forgotten journal, said to be written by Betsy Bell herself. The journal was kept in the care of the local historical society, tucked away in a dusty corner. Its pages were yellowed and brittle, but the words within were clear and haunting. Betsy's account provided a first-hand glimpse into the torment that had plagued her family. In one of the entries, dated just weeks before John Bell's death, Betsy wrote about a dream she had. She described a figure standing at the foot of her bed, much like the one William Porter had seen. The figure was shrouded in darkness, but its eyes burned with a fiery intensity. It spoke to her in a voice that was both familiar and alien, filling her with a sense of dread. "The witch is not what it seems," the figure had said. "It is bound by something deeper, something older than you can imagine." This cryptic message echoed in my mind as I continued reading. Betsy wrote about her father's declining health and the entity's increasingly violent behavior. But amid the despair, there was also a glimmer of hope. Betsy mentioned a visit from a man named Richard Powell, a schoolteacher who had once courted her. Powell was a man of many talents, known for his intelligence and knowledge of the arcane. He had come to offer his assistance, bringing with him books and artifacts that he believed could help. He and Betsy spent hours researching, trying to find a way to break the entity's hold on the family. In the final pages of the journal, Betsy recounted a confrontation between Powell and the entity. Powell had performed a ritual, invoking ancient names and symbols. The entity had responded with fury, but there was a moment of hesitation, a crack in its malevolent facade. Powell had seized that moment, demanding to know the entity's true nature. "You are not a witch," Powell had declared. "What are you?" The entity had shrieked, its voice shifting into something more primal and ancient. "I am bound by blood and vengeance. The sins of the past are my chains." These words, though enigmatic, held the key to understanding the Bell Witch. It was not merely the spirit of Kate Batts, nor a simple ghost. It was something far older and more complex, bound to the Bell family by a curse rooted in ancient wrongs. Armed with this knowledge, I returned to the Bell homestead for one final act. Following the clues from Betsy's journal, I performed a ritual of my own, calling upon the names and symbols that Powell had used. The air grew cold, and the oppressive presence of the entity filled the room. "Reveal yourself," I demanded. "Show me your true form." The shadows coalesced into a figure, its eyes burning with the same fiery intensity that Betsy had described. It was a being of darkness and rage, bound by the sins of those who had come before. "You are free," I whispered. "The truth has been uncovered. The past is no longer your prison." The entity screamed, a sound that seemed to shake the very foundations of the house. But as the echoes faded, so too did the presence of the Bell Witch. The air grew warm, and the oppressive weight lifted, leaving behind a sense of peace that the homestead had not known in centuries. The Bell Witch was gone, its chains broken by the truth of its origins. The curse that had plagued the Bell family for generations was finally lifted, leaving behind only the echoes of a dark and twisted history. As I left the homestead for the last time, I felt a sense of closure. The Bell Witch haunting had been a story of fear and suffering, but also of resilience and redemption. The truth, once hidden in the shadows, had finally come to light. And with it, the spirits of the past could rest in peace.